Welcome back to Mac and Jack's Stack Attack.
It's good to have you. We're going to be discussing Charles Dickens' Our Mutual Friend, monthlies number 7 and 8. Now, there are 7 chapters in this portion, so we're just going to try to crank these through as quickly as possible. Sorry to our sponsors, we're going to be having no commercial breaks this time. Let's talk about chapter 4.
Chapter 4, it's a great chapter in which half the people do not say anything. The Lamleys are trying to, do something shady with
Well, not do something shady. They're trying to set their Georgiana up with a
they're setting her up for failure or something.
I
there's
guess.
something sinister going on.
Maybe, yeah.
I mean, they're just totally just having conversations for Georgiana.
I guess that's true.
And fascination, and just kind of, because there's no actual evidence that they're into each other.
Yeah, we're introduced to a new character, Fascination Fledgeby. In this chapter, we later learn that he's 23 years old, young, very rich black bachelor, and the Lamleys are trying to set their, it's not their daughter, it's their friend's
daughter.
Yeah,
something like
daughter.
They're
looking after her at this present time, so they're trying to set her up with somebody who's super rich. And actually, the name of the chapter, Cupid Prompted, is hilarious because it's just a great representation of Dickens' humor as he that the Cupid needs to be prompted and pushed along, when in fact the two people don't say anything. Actually, on page 263 of the Penguin edition, let me just read you a discourse here.
Go for it.
This is the Lamleys talking, taking over and talking for Georgiana and Fascination Fledgeby. But what, said Mrs. Lamley, stealing her affectionate hand towards her dear girls, what did Georgie say? She says, replied Mr. Lamley, interpreting for her, that in her eyes you look very well in any color, Sophriana, and that if she had expected to be embarrassed by so pretty a compliment as she has received, she would not have worn another color herself. Though I tell her in reply that it would not have saved her, for whatever color she had worn would have been Fledgeby's color. But what does Fledgeby say? He says, replied Mrs. Lamley, interpreting for him, and patting the back of her dear girl's hand again, as if it were Fledgeby who had patted it, that is no compliment but a little natural act of homage that he couldn't resist, and expressing more feeling as if it were more feeling on the part of Fledgeby. He is right. Just great writing there as Cupid is prompted, and as the Lamleys are pushing each other together.
And it's quite interesting in the next chapter. Mr. Lamley talks to Fledgeby, and he's like, "Oh, hey, are you into her?" And he's like, and
not really.
In the next 2 pages,
doesn't even talk.
All we get from him is that we know that he can hold his tongue.
No, it's his nose.
Well, no, that Fledgeby can hold his tongue and not say anything.
Oh, that's right. Well, because Mr. Alfred Lamley tries to threaten him.
He gets angry.
He gets angry because he's like, "Man, you just know my daughter." So he's like, what does he say? I don't know if I can find it. "Oh, give me your nose, sir." He's like, man, wanted to beat him up, and we had this great interchange with Lamley and Mr. Fledgeby, where Mr. Fledgeby is holding his nose and says, "Don't take my nose, sir, don't take my nose."
"I beg your pardon, sir."
It's great, trying to be so gentlemanly when Mr. Lamley's about to beat up on him, so. And that's in chapter 5. Another thing in chapter 5, Fledgeby leaves and he visits his home, where one of his attendants is working, and his name is Raya. He's a Jew, and we get a lot of funny Jewish jokes, but as you, Miss Thackeray, mentioned earlier, this is not to look down on the Jews, it's to give the Jews, a thumbs up, according to Dickens.
Yeah, and I really felt the sympathy for this Jewish man when he's just using him as a front for his business and just kind of beating up on him in general, not necessarily physically, but...
It's locked.
Hello, I'm Mr. Lamley,
And I'm Mrs. Lamley.
and together we have Georgiana's best interest at heart.
Now, that was a message from Mr. and Mrs. Lamley. They so graciously brought us cookies. So thank you, and it was a pleasure to have you guys on our show.
So we're going on to chapter 6, and Mortimer Lightwood and Eugene Rayburn are just chilling.
In their office.
And then who shows up but Charlie? And
With the schoolmaster.
And they call out Mortimer. Which
Call out Eugene. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay, fine. Eugene. There are a lot of characters in this book, Mac. It's hard to keep them under
well,
control.
and I always confuse these.
That's
two.
fine, because they're both lawyers, both working the same thing. Line of work, and they're best friends. It talks about this in the chapter. They actually call Eugene out for digging on Lizzie Hexam, and Charlie's like, well, please don't. But actually, he gets a little emotional and starts yelling at Eugene. And it's kind of ironic because the schoolmaster, who's secretly digging and creepily digging on Lizzie, is behind him, kind of supporting him, like, yeah, don't do that. But he's actually doing it himself. So that's a great irony there. On page 291, Eugene, by this time Charlie Hexam has left the room in a fury, and the schoolmaster has decided to take his stance on the matter against Eugene, and he said, I will not be treated like a child, and I'm going to tell you what I think. And this guy, we just know that he hasn't had a lot of experience with comebacks in his time, because he's struggling. It says, if you suppose that boy, who is really tired of waiting, said Eugene politely, if you suppose that boy to be friendless, Mr. Rayburn, you deceive yourself. I am his friend, and you shall find me so. And you will find him on the stairs, remarked Eugene. They go on to banter back and forth, and the schoolmaster says, my hand and heart are in this cause and are open to him. And quite a coincidence, the door is open, marked Eugene. And man, schoolmaster's like, I scorn you. He's struggling. But we just know that Eugene is quick with his words, and he still has it out for Lizzie and still likes her. And so does the schoolmaster. And obviously, the schoolmaster lost that battle.
And we move on to the next chapter. Cue Silas Wegg chilling with his best friend, Mr. Venus, in his creepy shop.
And that's in chapter 7, in which a friendly move is originated.
Which it's kind of interesting. He's trying to figure out ways to get in on the fortune. And he's just plotting. And who should show up but Rokesmith, his sworn enemy, it seems like.
And we're talking about Silas Wegg, the man with the wooden leg.
And he's just plotting secrets, and so when Rokesmith arrives, they've been drinking and kind of getting loopy, so they don't know if he's heard anything, and he's really suspicious. But Rokesmith's just being polite, and
Rokesmith is suspicious.
No,
Silas
is because he's been drinking.
Right.
Rokesmith's sober as a judge. It appears.
Really? Because he's usually not. He's usually just drinking. Remember the scene in past when he's... What is the scene? That is funny. Okay.
Anyways, there's a wonderful innocent elopement occurring in chapter 8, which when I read the title...
Did you see it? Did you call it?
Yeah.
Did you really? Wow.
I did not call it. I was expecting a normal elopement, but then I was like, oh.
It's this girl and her dad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh, I mean, it makes sense, but, he...
Now this is Miss Bella.
Yeah,
Miss Bella Wilfer.
Chuck Dickens is kind of throwing us a curveball, so...
Now this is Miss Bella Wilfer, and she lives with the Boffins currently. And her parents, there's obviously a rocky relationship with her mother and her little sister as they come and visit her at the beginning of the chapter. And they eventually burst into tears, and as the secretary brings in a parcel for Miss Bella, that she is to return home to her father with a 50-pound note. And so the innocent elopement is when Bella returns to her father and generously gives him the 50-pound note and says, "Go buy some nice clothes, some nice boots," and they go out on the town. And it's a very sweet story when the pa, buys her all this nice stuff and treats her like a queen. So, very, very innocent. And we know that Bella Wilford doesn't have a very rich upbringing because she's like pa and ma, and she's not very proper, and she says ain't a lot. So, we know that her speech isn't as proper. That's all in chapter 8. Unless you want to offer anything.
No, I'm good.
You good?
Chapter 9 made me kind of sad, though. I mean, I felt bad.
Little Johnny.
Like, I kind of wasn't paying attention up to the point where, like, they kind of just said it out in the open. Like, I was like, oh, he wants to give the other guy stuff because the other guy doesn't have stuff. No, he's just bequeathing it to him as he dies.
Well, yeah, I mean, chapter 9, in which the orphan makes his will, clearly, states the sadness of chapter 9, and as you, Miss Thackeray, definitely told us, there is a death.
Yeah, and
very sad.
I just felt so bad.
Yeah, Mrs. Boffin cared so much for this little boy and tried to give him a home, and he just didn't make it. I think the red spots are they mumps? What did you think?
Could be smallpox. I
Smallpox.
wasn't sure.
Yeah, but we get a description of these red spots that are streaked across his whole body, and so he just couldn't make it. Now, do we know how old Johnny was?
Just a small child. I thought it was interesting, though, that his last thing that he bequeathed is a kiss for the bullfrog lady.
Yeah. That's funny.
He gives to Rokesmith, who kind of has a little something for her. So it'll be interesting to see what happens.
The Beaufort lady. Now, if you on page 324 of the Penguin edition, at the top of the page it says, "For the murmur was, who is the Beaufort lady?" And now, if you say Beaufort, and you say it, if you think of a little child who's trying to say beautiful, and who's sick and mumbling, Beaufort is beautiful. So I think that's excellently worded by Dickens. Yeah. It's just a great word choice. And if you say it slowly, it's a beautiful lady. So, at the end of chapter 9, Johnny dies. It's very sad, but a kiss for the beautiful lady. What do you think that means?
Well, I mean, he was just surprised earlier in the chapter when he saw her. He was like, "Whoa, she fine."
I'm sure that was going through the little boy's mind, probably.
Something along those lines, yes.
And maybe it has to do with innocence and a kiss for the beautiful lady. I don't know.
I don't know. But it's kind of interesting how his mother kind of gets really... she kind of just loses it and says, "No, you can't take him from me." And so the Boffins just said, "We just are trying to get him to a children's hospital."
Right, and then she realizes...
And she's like, "Those exist?"
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, she's like, "I didn't... many people have told me that they want to take my children away to, these little children's hospitals." And she's like... Mrs. Boffin's like, "Well, just come with us, I promise, we're not gonna take your kid," because she has more sense than that. Even though she's the most fashionable lady, she's also very sensitive.
Yeah, and I was almost worried because after he dies, they're trying to find a replacement Johnny, as it were, and so I don't know if it's right at the beginning, but there's a suggestion for making it Silas Wake since he's already in the house. Mm-hmm. And when I saw that part, I was like,
old, yeah.
"No!" Because, he's plotting to get money and to, just swindle them, so I didn't want that.
Yeah, I don't think, yeah.
But luckily...
They find somebody else. The guy that coincidentally came to give Mr. Is it Rokesmith is the secretary, right?
Yeah.
Who comes and gives Mr. Rokesmith the news that Johnny is sick. He is sitted down.
They sit him down.
They sit him down, and they give him this big meal, and he
Shropey.
And when they come back from the hospital, he says, "All right, you're gonna take me home now." And Mrs. Boffin so expertly, words. "Would you like to stay here, and would you like to eat like this forever?" And It's
It's
a very
like,
sweet,
would I?
yeah, very sweet chapter at the end. We don't even know if he's joking or if he's just so, what was it, gabberflasted? He is so gabberflasted.
Or for you American folks, that's flabbergasted.
That he didn't know what to say. So we now know 9, sad, Johnny dies. 10 is happy because the Boffins are now officially adopting Sloppy. Now, I don't know what you thought about this, Mac, but the irony of the Boffins, who are the buffoons, adopting Sloppy. Just the name, the way that Dickens uses his naming of the characters is superb. So we'll see how Sloppy plays out. We already know that he
Is that
really
a fat
likes
joke?
food. Jake, you're having some weight issues.
All right. We will conclude this.
He's a wrestler.
And this is Mac and Jack's Thack Attack.
This is monthly number 7 and 8. Thank you so much for joining us. Again, thank you to Mr. and Mrs. Lamley for the very delicious cookies and their shared time with us. It's time for us to part ways, and we will see you on the next monthly number 9. Thanks again. I'm Jack,
And I'm Mac.
and this is Jack and Max Thack
Thack
Attack.
Attack.
Have a great one.